Hi, welcome to Chapter and Verse. And with us today, we have a very special guest who, in a sense, needs not much of an introduction. Sean McDowell is the son of the famous Josh McDowell. And Sean is becoming a writer and a speaker in his own right, also teaming up with his dad, who's a wonderful apologist, one of the finest American apologists we have in our lifetime. And Sean is following in those wonderful footsteps, and he's doing a terrific job. We have a couple of books that I want to bring to your attention. The first one, edited by Sean, is called Apologetics for a New Generation. And it covers a lot of topics: apologetics and race, Jesus risen for a new generation, making apologetics come alive in the youth ministry, apologetics and emotional development, conversational apologetics. What is apologetics? Apologetics is giving people an answer to questions. And Sean and his dad are famous for this, and we'll see a little bit of it today. Also, 77 frequently asked questions about God and the Bible. What is the difference between the Bible and the Quran? Questions about the Bible. How do you correctly interpret the Bible? How is it that the Bible gets misunderstood? Questions about the Bible. What is God's church? What is Jesus going to do at his second coming? Why did Jesus need to die? And other questions which we'll get into. Sean, in an introduction, how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing I would say is I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 12 years. We have 3 kids. I have a son, Scotty, who's 8 years old, and he's really into superheroes. He loves superheroes. I have a daughter who's 5. She's blonde, just super cute, stolen her dad's heart. Whoa.
Well, there goes the tree.
We'll just
if
keep
a tree
going.
falls in the studio, does it make a sound?
I think we heard the sound, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was one to remember. And then I actually have a son named Shane who will be born coming up very soon.
Wow.
So he's a full human person, so we consider him a son. He's just still inside the womb. So a little about my family, but I write books. I've written about 15 books, as you mentioned here, and I get to speak around the country. And I also get a chance to teach full-time at a Christian school. So I teach high school, so I'm with students every day.
Wow. What's it like to be a high school instructor these days?
You know what? I enjoy it a lot. Students, in one sense, young people are the way they've always been. They're always trying to make sense of their world. They're trying to understand what is true, find their place in the world. They have questions about relationships and self-image, etc. But today there's some unique challenges, especially with technology. Yes. Young people are so used to just being connected all the time that sometimes to get them to stop and focus and learn is a unique challenge. But I think young people today, there's some incredible promise in this generation. If adults are willing to pour into lives and into them, we can see them just accomplish some really great things.
How do we reach young people today, given the fact that they're really plugged into media, social networking? You know, there was a news item not too long ago on the news. This was an extreme. I guess that's why it got into the news. But there was a gal in high school, I think, or middle school. I think she was in high school. She had, in 1 month, texted 14,000 texts to her friend, and in fact, they showed her, she and her friend standing together, and they weren't even talking to each other. Both of them were texting to one another.
Yep.
So people are really connected. We're into movies, we're into DVDs, we're into video games. Some of them are actually violent video games. I'm not sure how many students are into those violent video games, but some psychologists believe that it's robbing us of empathy and making us less empathetic than former college generations, which had been measured for empathy in the past. What are the challenges of reaching young people today?
Well, one of the things to do is to actually use technology to reach this generation. I think technology is morally neutral. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. So I think we ought to be using technology to reach young people, to meet them where they are at. I mean, if kids are on Facebook, get on Facebook. If they're on Twitter, get on Twitter. I mean, let's take a technology and redeem it and use it for good to reach out to this generation. So that's one thing that I do. Sometimes adults will look at this generation and see them sitting next to each other here, and instead of talking, they'll be texting. So an adult will sit down with a young person, and what the adult will do is they'll be talking to him, and the young person will pull out a phone and start texting a friend, and the adult will be totally offended, totally upset. There'll be a break in relationship where the young person isn't thinking about it that way. They've just kind of grown up in a generation where they're used to using technology, and that's how they communicate. So there's different assumptions that often come to play between the older generation and the younger generation. And part of it is just understanding those assumptions, stepping outside of our world, reaching into young people, building a relationship with them, caring about them, spending time with them. And I found when we do that, and I tell adults, I say, you don't have to pretend like you are something that you're not. Just be yourself, right? And I think young people respond to that. So technologically, a way to think about it, though, is that young people today are natives. They are raised in this technological world. Video games, they have a phone. Every moment they can get in the internet. 96% of teens today are on the internet. But adults, maybe 30 and over, are technological immigrants. We've learned technology, but they have grown up with technology. So it's a very different way of thinking about the world and interacting with young people today.
What advice would you give to now, I'm putting myself in the place of that adult that we just talked about, where the adult walks into a room and the kids are on the keyboards,
Yeah.
Should an adult just wait his time?
Well, it depends on the relationship with the adult and the kid, right? The parent relationship is different than some neighbor who comes in, or a pastor comes in, or a parent's friend. I mean, those relationships set the boundaries. So if you're talking about a parent with a child, it's the parent who sets the pace for the home. They're the ones who set the standards. So with my own kids, my son is 8. We let him Saturday morning, he can get up early and he can play video games.
Yeah.
But he doesn't Sunday morning, he doesn't after school, unless he gets all his homework done, and then he asks us, and then sometimes we say yes, sometimes no. We have rules in our family where when we're at the dinner table, we are not texting unless it's some emergency or something like that. We put our technology aside and we relate together, we turn the television off. So if a family, the family has the right to set up those dynamics in the home, and just make sure they're reasonable, and there has to be some give and take, but ultimately the parents get to set the line where they think it is. Now that's very different than an adult coming in. If you came in and my kid's, was playing his video game, if you came in and said, now put that down, let me talk to you, my son would be like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Rather than maybe coming up and saying, hey, show me how this works, and can I play with you, and what do you like about this? I think kids love it when adults enter into their world on their terms.
What advice would you give to an adult who would like to become more technologically savvy?
You know what? I would say ask a young person to help you. Ask them to help you how to do it. I think there's a lot of fear sometimes stepping in, and how does this technology work? And what if I can't figure it out? Am I going to waste time? Am I going to get frustrated? Those are very natural fears. And sometimes we can overcome those fears by just stepping out and just doing it. I mean, sometimes we got to get out of our box and just do it, and we kind of learn as we go along. But I think a good way for an adult to build a relationship is ask a young person, say, hey, I got this new, smartphone, it's an iPhone, I don't know how it works. Can you show me a couple things?
Yeah.
And then you can try to work it, and you might fumble around and make some mistakes, and the young person will laugh and go, oh my goodness, you don't know how to use it, and go, hey, I'm trying, and you can actually build a relationship that way by doing it. So, if there's some kind of technological thing that an quote older person wants to learn, find a young person who knows how to do it and say, hey, I want to learn this. I can tell you're really good at it. Will you help me out? And it makes the young person feel good, right? It feels like you value their opinion and you care about them and you're willing to listen to them. So when it moves on to other issues, maybe outside of technology, if you've built that relationship and showed that you care, maybe they'll be willing to listen there as well.
It's really touching in a way, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I can envision this. What kind of questions do young people have about the Lord Jesus Christ, and and about Christianity.